This is the Business Chat Podcast.
Welcome to the Business Chat. I'm here with my guests, Catherine and Paul, today of Clark McDowell. They're a New York-based branding agency. Welcome to the show, you guys. Good to see you.
You too.
Great to be here.
Excellent. Well, again, appreciate you guys taking the time to have this chat. You guys can visit, those of you listening, clarkmcdowell.com. You can check them out on LinkedIn. We'll also post both Catherine and Paul's LinkedIn profile URLs. Everything will be in the notes. Before we go any further, I'd mentioned to you guys before we hit record and started this chat, we like to bring a local beverage, whether it's in hand or not. We like to at least plug said local beverage or a preferred drink on the show. So we'll start with Paul. Paul, what are you drinking today?
Grapefruit bubbly made by Pepsi, one of our clients. So making sure we're doing the right thing for our very loyal clients. So yeah, but it's
excellent. Great. I also love bubbly, by the way. And you mentioned you have cases of the stuff. This is typical for those of us hopelessly hooked on bubbly water. A good deal. All right, shout out to bubbly. And Catherine, young lady, what are you bringing to the show today?
I went down the artisanal route, and I'm drinking Catalyst kombucha made in Massachusetts. And the reason I'm drinking it actually is because it's a refillable giant bottle, so I can go and fill it up at the farmer's market once a week and have minimal impact on the planet.
That's awesome. And like I said, a little sustainability angle of not just a delicious beverage. That's great. Well, again, like I mentioned, my guest's making me look like a hopeless day drinking alcoholic. This is not the case. In moderation, I'm enjoying Shorts Brew here from Michigan. I've got their autumn IPA. It's a delicious seasonal on-brand beverage for the fall. If you're in Michigan, you know of Shorts. If you're not, it's like everywhere, all over the place. So shout out to Shorts Brew. And again, guys, we'll do the virtual cheers. I thank you for being on the show. If you got your glass, if you don't, hold up that kombucha bottle, Catherine. Cheers.
Cheers.
Welcome to the business.
Yeah, great to be with you.
Great. Yeah, man, this is fun. Well, today, again, you guys are here on the Industry Expert series, and we're pulling in all kinds of different industries. So there's really no theme there. The only theme is just experts in their space. And we met on LinkedIn, like so many of my guests and I do. And what I noticed right away wasn't just really impressive work that y'all do for your clients, but what anybody checking out your website right now and looking at your content, you guys do a great job just being very minimal and bold with your messaging, is you're out about making brands future ready. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So we want to hear about future ready brands, but we want to hear about the people behind the future ready branding, And so it's Clark McDowell. So it's all about Paul and Catherine. So yeah, tell me a little bit of your professional story, how you two met, and kind of how you got to the point of starting Clark McDowell.
I'm going to take the beginning of the story, which is kind of what Paul and I did before we met, and then I'm going to hand it to Paul because he does such a beautiful job at talking about the magic moment when it all started.
Yeah, cool.
Paul was a designer. He studied in London, went to art school, and then was a designer in London and moved to New York and ended up being creative director in one of the top packaging firms in New York City. And I was started on the client side. My first job was actually for an oil company, but the good news was it was in a branding capacity, and branding back in the 90s was very new. So that's where I kind of fell in love with that. And then I ended up moving strategy side in an agency and starting an agency in New York. And Paul and I were actually neighbors, so we don't have this beautiful business story that people tell. Ours is much more of a human story and much more sort of relationship based. So Paul, I'm going to hand it to you to just talk about how we started.
Yeah. It was quite funny because, like Catherine said, literally next door neighbors, as in garden fence next door neighbors, which we didn't tell our clients for the longest time. Trust us with your $1 billion brand. We're actually,
that's right.
Yeah, looking over the garden fence.
Yes.
But my wife was talking to Catherine about babies. Catherine's two girls are 6 months older than my two boys, and Janice came home and said, "Oh, the girl next door, she's in design or branding or something or marketing." And I leave her alone. So this went on for a few months, and eventually we bumped into each other, and both begrudgingly we said, "Oh, I'm a creative and you're this, and okay, should we talk? Okay, we'll talk." And we sort of better halves dragged us in. And so we sat in Catherine's sofa next door, which had no legs at the time. So we're sitting on these tiny little sofa with our knees up by our ears.
Funny.
So that it must have looked quite comical, really. So I sort of showed Catherine my work, and then Catherine sort of talked about what she did and her vision, and it was just like this magic sort of aha moment when that spark happens, when you sort of like, oh my God, I found the yin to my yang, I found that other side of what I want. I could never articulate, well, still have trouble articulating, but I could never sort of quite fully articulate the insights I had about what I felt about the creative industry and its limitations at the time. And Catherine was, you know, frustrated around, great, I got all this great thinking, but it doesn't turn into anything sort of tangible. So we sort of came to the same insight. This is 24 years ago, from very different angles, and that sort of like that aha moment was the you know, the impetus to actually, like, do you want to start working together somehow? So we would kind of just umming and ahhing, and eventually we said, damn it, let's do this thing. Let's be brave, and let's literally do it. So Catherine and I went off to the local landlord who owned a junk store, Mr. G, in the neighborhood, and it was piled high full of what could best describe as just absolute crap, with this little winding path.
It's just garbage.
Just garbage, just stuff that he collected over the years. And he was like, well, this is all I've got. I kind of virtually was about to walk away thinking they're never going to like it. And we both went, right, this is awesome. This is what we want. So we cleaned it out and turned this junk shop into a little studio. And that's literally how it started. And it was just this magic moment. And I was like, shit, I found Flip. I found somebody that, you know, is super smart, super bright, can really respects and appreciates the world of creative. And hopefully she found somebody that was like, wow, somebody that really gets and respects strategy and understands how these things really work together to produce fantastic work. And that's why we started the studio in the East Village, and we built from there.
Man, and you know, the story too is you're talking about this, for those that don't work in marketing creative, maybe it's the same in a lot of disciplines, but that is how it goes, isn't it? When you kind of go, oh, we probably should talk, and there's sort of that introduction, because you do know that the skills are there, and you're going, this is too convenient to be next door neighbors. Surely this isn't some kind of fit. We'll just water the garden and say hello each morning, get the trash and whatnot. So it almost kind of presents like a nice creative movie script. Maybe somebody listening to this will reach out to you and say, hey, let's put out a casting call, do the story. It's too funny. Like, you guys, the way you tell it too, it's great. It's charming and all that. Well, and again, with all the things you guys do and all you could talk about, I'm going to take it from there. So you get this great property that was garbage, and you've turned it into this studio. And this is about what year, Paul, Catherine? When did you guys officially kick off?
1999, and then we incorporated as Clark McDowall in January 1st of 2000, so the beginning of a new millennial. And, you know, it was in the East Village in New York, which wasn't a business district at all. It's become a little bit, well, it's become very gentrified now. So, but at the time it was edgy and just not somewhere that anybody was setting up an office. So we saw it as a huge plus. Actually, our clients would come down and get confronted, if you like, with a different environment. And it really became part of our identity. So being very creative, being very grounded, being sort of at the cutting edge of trends. So we've stayed in the East Village since day one.
Yeah, and since then you've grown a team, and that team's distributed and is all over. And so you're still New York based. There's still some of those same roots that you set up, a lot of those, right, from what you laid down in the East Village. And a lot of what I've noticed we talked about in kind of the lead up conversations with you two has to do with your dynamic, the two of you working together. And that's a piece that I think even beneath corporate veils, multi-billion dollar organizations, you know better than most, there's 2 or 3 people making the decisions. There's some chemistry in an organization that it's not that it can't be documented and you can't make systems and try to live that out, but that's sort of the fun, isn't it? The human experience that you can't replace a Paul and Catherine dynamic any more than Apple's still there, but without Steve Jobs, there's something noticeably different. They're a different business now, and we could go on and on, but talk to me about today, which of the 2 of you, and you can both jump in, that's fun when people go for it, kind of came up with where we are today with this idea of future ready. And, you know, I'm hearing other terms, right? Future proof. the timing of a impending recession that I feel like we're in. It's coming. We're in it. As companies are going, we want to hear about this. I want our listeners to hear. Let's jump right into that. Why future ready? What is that? And then you can kind of reverse engineer a bit. Why, if that has any connection to the uniqueness that you two bring. I just want to hear your thoughts on future ready.
So I think it was really about, we've always been very adaptable. We stayed small. We deliberately resisted big growth. So, we're about, on average, about 25 people over the years. And usually when we got to about 25, 30, we would start turning down work. We never wanted to be huge. And part of that was because we wanted to keep that chemistry, that human element. And part of it is because we wanted to adapt and be nimble and continue to be creative and not become a big machine that has to kind of feed the beast. So in this notion of like always leaning into what's happening, how do we get ahead of it? A good example is when the pandemic hit, we declared hybrid, I think 2 weeks into lockdown. We were like, you know what, this is the best. It's the worst thing that happened to a lot of people. But from a business standpoint, it was very refreshing for us to say, hey, maybe we can actually work differently. We can innovate. We can get talent elsewhere. So Future Ready was about really sort of embracing that notion that if you know who you are inside and you're confident about your soul and what you stand for, then you can be super nimble and flexible and adapt to situations. So that's a lot of what we tell our clients is get deep around knowing who you are as a brand, knowing what makes you strong, knowing what you stand for, and then allow yourself to just change. We know that the best artists, the best musicians, the best fashion houses, they're changing all the time. They keep, they keep ahead and they keep shaping trends for us versus following. So that's kind of in our DNA, and it's really what we preach to our clients is get to know who you are so that you can actually adapt.
That's tremendous. And speaking of that, your clients are, again, congratulations to you two. Just one, for being in business as long as you have, growing, adapting in the pandemic, and to have a focus for your clients. As I've absorbed your content, one of the lines that also stuck out to me was how you partner with brands that have bold ambitions to make our future brighter. Paul, why don't you take that one? What are you guys talking about when you say that?
Yeah. So I think over the years, we love all of our clients, so it's not a ding on anybody. But I think what Catherine and I are at, and this is shared obviously with the team as well. We're really interested in working with brand owners, organizations, marketers, CMOs, whomever it may be, that actually want to make a difference and change. Now, it used to be more just about growth and making a difference to the business and the bottom, that kind of thing. But I think now it's really shifted towards doing something more positive for the world. So for people, for planet, for communities, whatever it might be. And they could be small steps, small things. So for instance, with Palmolive, when we rebranded those guys, recently, Palmolive Dish Soap, it sounds sort of like, oh God, Palmolive Dish Soap, how boring. But actually, the scale of the impact of that change, right? Just in that changing the bottle, changing it to recyclable materials to natural, those small changes actually make a massive difference. And I think that our clients are partners that actually wanting to make change, to do the right thing, either to meet headwinds or because it's the right thing to do, are the ones that we want to do more business with and work with. Because as agency owners, we have a responsibility too, into helping. As we know, capitalism and all that sort of stuff, it's a finite thing. So we have to we have to really make it like Catherine with her kombucha, refillable kombucha bottle, etc. It's all of those things that they all do add up. So as agencies, we can champion the clients and help them and challenge them and inspire them. And also in the partners that we're with, we have turned down work. Could have been very high profile work because we just didn't believe in their values and we did not believe it was the right thing to do. It could be for animal rights. It could have been for something else. And we said, this does not fit with our values. Thank you anyway. And we'll do that. We're willing to do that. So that's why it's sort of, we have to paint a brighter future. So we're optimists at heart, and we believe that we can actually help inspire.
And I'll throw something in there. Maybe I'm speaking for you, and I want you to chime in as we move to the next question. But because behind that, we all know from experience on both sides. I've been on the side of the desk that's ordering, reaching out to an engaging agency, and in the agency side, whether someone can understand that or not, where you're deploying those services and collaborating as a service, it's painful for both sides when it's not a culture fit, when it's not a matchup of general kind of ethos. Again, like the Palmolive examples, phenomenal, because isn't it harder to work with something seemingly more mundane and, like you said, a little drab and like, great, what are we going to do with this dish soap? But I guess what I'm hearing you say, if their leadership culture is at least going, hey, we honestly are asking you, bring us somebody, we're willing, but it's Palmolive. I'd rather take willing Palmolive than potentially, $100 billion large organization that's just kind of not hearing the whole conversation, right, on sustainability or whatever.
100% right, 100% right. In
Yeah.
fact, you can reframe something like mundane dish soap to actually a step of optimism, where actually, individuals can do a little thing. Same with early crackers that we created for. I'm not just plugging our work, by the way, but early crackers that we created for Post Holdings. That's selling little tasty crackers to Walmart shoppers, etc., using sustainable regenerative farming. That's freaking awesome. It's just awesome. It's like, and Post are willing to put themselves out there. And Walmart said, no, this is what we want. This is what we want to be doing. So all of this is step change for actually making a bit of a difference.
So cool. So cool. Well, again, and again, we'll have to have you guys back on because there's so much you're seeing. You have so much experience. And there's so many topics that the LinkedIn audience, who I'm primarily addressing, is hungry for. This is new. These are terms. You mentioned earlier, Captain, branding, not really a concept until into the 90s. So a lot of us in business, a lot of folks in business, we're lagging, right? So it's great to hear, like, wait, what's been going on with agency and corporate advertising and marketing? This is a thing happening. And so that tees up my next question, which is, Paul, and you mentioned you have love for all your clients and the ones you choose to work with, and that's great. And maybe not mentioning any of them, right? But what is a common mistake you see for corporate listeners right now when they do reach out, right? This is what we would like you to do. And it starts that way. They've got a campaign, a new product rollout. What's one thing you see that the common thread that you go in the spirit of being future ready and giving back, and something that you go like, hey, this is something that, we see as kind of a common error in whatever capacity. I'm just interested in what you guys see, because I know we all see kind of common missteps, right?
One of the things that to us distinguishes when we can do great work versus when we don't do great work or find it harder to do great work starts at the very beginning on the client side in terms of how they think about the problem. Are they asking the right questions? And are they looking for a vendor or are they looking for a partner? And when they look for a vendor, they're very willing to silo the problem and say, oh, we just need a new name, or we just need a package design, or we just need some insights work, or we just need some strategy work. But actually, they usually have a brand problem. So what we found, and the best leaders we've seen actually make sure that they have very senior leadership involved in selecting the right partner.
I like that.
And asking the right questions and setting everybody up in the right direction. That upfront investment, they don't need to be in the everyday, but that sets the tone for the way their organization then thinks about who they partner with, thinks about the brief, and really approaches the problem differently. So that would be the overriding thing, is making sure you don't, if you're investing in a partner, you might be spending several $100,000, and then you're asking some junior person to brief them who's maybe never done that before. That's not going to set you up for success. So I would just say investment from the top, and making sure that you are willing to ask a broader question than you think you need at the beginning, and then narrow down on exactly what the specifics are once you've had that space to think and question.
Yeah. It's a relationship. It's not a transaction at that level. And I think over the years we've had less success when somebody goes in with that sort of, and I love the way Catherine phrased it, sort of the vendor mindset, the vendor transaction, and you don't solve the big problems that way. You can't, and things do get siloed, and you do need to kind of trust the folks that are working with you, and also welcome the challenge, and welcome to be inspired, as opposed to trying to control the vendor to do the thing that you want them to do. And often it's not that successful unless there's a very specific, tactical thing that one needs to have done, but otherwise, you need to, of course, you're building for that relationship.
Yeah, I love that you guys distinguish that, because that is, if there's any takeaway in this, it's that there's a huge difference between engaging in a partner for that campaign, that product, that service, versus a vendor transaction for a, one granular piece of creative or set of creatives or a funnel or whatever thing they think they're set out to do. What would you two say, again, as experts in branding and partnering with, some pretty, again, impressive brands, some large organizations, but most importantly, I guess what I'm getting at, the question here is, do you notice a common thread with that propensity for transactional kind of outreach versus partnership because they've got an in-house team? So you talk about Coca-Cola, right? We talk about, doesn't fill in the name of the brand. They're coming with some folks in-house. Do you still sometimes get a partnership approach from the big guys that have a legion of in-house creatives going, we're going to Clark McDowall because you're going to bring new creative for our team? Talk to me about what it looks like when a big organization with in-house comes to you.
I would say with the big organizations, currently we're probably doing more strategy work than we are doing executional work. And I would say with those organizations, we do see partnership. Now, once in a while, you get that RFP that's led by a junior person who honestly might be super bright. They just don't have the experience or the authority to really ask the questions and set the project in the right course. But for the most part, I think they are looking at partnership. It does help when you have repeat business with a big corporation like that, because then you start to actually join the dots for them between different initiatives that they may actually be internally siloed. So it is much harder when you get one project with a large company like that and it's just one job. What really benefits us is those client relationships like PepsiCo, or Comcast, where we're doing multiple things. So we have more access to senior leaders and we can add value beyond the project by, joining the dots, knowing more people in the organization. Yeah. So our advice to clients would be, make sure you try and use good agencies on more than one thing because you'll get more out of them. And then for agencies to not try and have too many large clients at once and try and narrow it down to maybe 2 or 3 big accounts so you can really be a great partner to them, as opposed to spreading yourself so thin because the value add isn't that.
Yeah, so those of you running agencies hearing that are nodding your head and in full understanding of what Catherine's talking about when we tend to get in and just see the potential, not just for the money, right? We're all in business and that's something that's an understatement, but we are also looking to succeed and it's hard and it takes discipline, does it not, to go, this is more than we can chew right now. Yes. And even potentially watch that client kind of go this way, but knowing that that's most healthy for your organization and you can deliver that A+ content. That's really great. That's great. Yeah, and again, on the transactional partner side, camping out and on that thought or kind of, transitioning out of it, we were talking before we hit record on this conversation that there are things that these brands and these large organizations, startup, varying in size, going, yeah, future ready. I'm interested in this. And they've been seeking this. And if they're watching our conversation, listening today, they're curious before I reach out and engage with a Clark McDowall, with an agency. Maybe it's somebody they've been kind of engaging at this point. What do you feel? And there's so much they could do, right, to prepare themselves for working with agency, but maybe a couple things. I wouldn't limit it to one for y'all. That's too limiting. But what are some things that are key that you notice set apart where you can go, wow, this client showed up with, maybe no understanding of creative because they're pivoting or they're a new startup, or maybe they're huge and they know all about paid advertising and client profiling and this kind of thing. But what have you noticed helps in either case for them to come to a Clark McDowall and you go, this is ideal. We can get right to work. What are some things people can do to be that client for potentially your group, obviously?
I think there's 3 big ones, and the first one may be more obvious. So, the first one being knowing what your brand stands for, who your consumer is, setting a vision, having a purpose and a positioning. But I think that's probably a little 101, and a lot of people say, yes, I can understand how that's going to set me up for growth.
Yeah, I've got that, Catherine. Thanks.
Exactly.
We're getting a lot of work, and we think we're offering a very different product that's really helping people. Our one, brand architecture, where sometimes the way you organize all your products is not the way people shop. And so you may be organizing them based on what you do or what you think people want. But if you can take a step back and think about that person who's choosing between things, and what's motivating them, and reorganize your portfolio in a way that matches the way that people actually want to engage with you, that will then imply, okay, maybe we need to change our branding strategy, maybe we need to change the way we show up on shelf or on the internet, whatever it might be. But architecture has been a huge unlock in terms of giving people a better springboard for growth. Right. And the third piece is what we would call like 360 brand expression. So really thinking not just about, oh, I need a new logo, or I need a new website, or I need a new video, but really setting the tone for what is that vision for expression, whether it's visual and verbal, that can connect all the dots between all your different touch points. So what is that thread that holds all the way that the brand shows up? So we get hired a lot for all three of those things. So brand vision, obviously, when I say it's I'm sure your audience knows that's something they need to do, but the other two, architecture and 360, and it means for us that we don't always execute the back end, but we're providing other agencies with some kind of common vision for how the brand wants to express itself. So those things we found to be really powerful for setting you up for growth, setting you up for changing times.
Sure. And then, Paul, you were going to comment.
Yeah. So because I think, you're asking the question also is if somebody is preparing. Oh, sorry, I think that's mine. If somebody is preparing to bring in an agency as well, what we've seen is that there's often RFPs are run like by junior people, and the most successful ones, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier, is when you actually have senior involvement and that really get to understand, what the issues are. It's not, you can't do it from the bottom up that way, because you're not asking the right questions. They just do not have the experience to ask the right questions from that. So I've seen, in order to do all the things that Catherine was talking about before, or the things that we developed, if you want to bring in an agency to hit on all those things, you need somebody that really understands what that takes and what kind of partner that takes and what sort of chemistry. Because again, it's not just about the functionality of those disciplines, but it's also about the chemistry. So there is a human aspect of it as well, and understanding the psychology of your clients, understanding psychology of your agencies is really, really important as well. So and also what we're seeing right now, and it'd be interesting if you're just seeing the same thing, is we've been brought in to pitch on more things, much more agencies pitching on smaller work. So it's spread thin. So it's how can you truly evaluate everybody? How can you really get under the layers to really understand the partnership that you're trying to build in order to do all the things that Catherine said, which are pretty big, meaty brand challenges, right? So you need to know that you're kind of getting together and building. It's not a transaction, it's a relationship. So there's some of the things that we see, with our clients, with the mistakes that they have made, and we've been on the other end of it, and we've seen what has been very successful, whether we won the pitch or not, but very successfully run, and ones that it's just an absolute disaster, and it's a waste of everyone's time.
We'll have to do one called brand disasters. Yeah, and we'll make sure you bring your pint to that one. But I mean, look in your work, Paul, and take Snooze, which my wife and I love, and we enjoyed Snooze in Austin, Texas, when we lived there, in Los Angeles, where I've recently teardrop departed and left the beautiful Golden West Coast for reasons I won't get into. Snooze is awesome. What a brand! And unpacking that page, we'd be here another hour. But one of the things you guys are talking about in flipping the script, back to your point of getting senior involvement and really pulling back and going, we can make you a menu, at Clark McDowall, we can build you graphics. That's so, like you said, junior in an RFP outlook from a company going, here, Timmy, Tommy, Tammy, I need you to go find an agency to fix a thing. And it's a tourniquet, transactional fixing capability, capacity and mindset versus, like you said, you're not focusing on the food, it's experience. And that sometimes for us in marketing can seem so one-on-one. And those of you listening, a lot of what Catherine and Paul can bring you and what I'm even learning from them and just their rich history is just simply, like Catherine was saying, strategy, an audit, a second look, a third set of eyes, or fifth maybe, depending on where their journey's taken them. Would you guys agree that's something you could help pretty much anyone that would want to reach out at least have the conversation if there's a culture fit about, yeah, we'd love to have a look and sort of audit may sound very IRS, right? But what I mean by it is true, bring us your top 5. What's the problem, right? Because my question to you of how companies can help make themselves future ready implies they've got a problem. They would like to be future ready. Phone's not ringing like it used to. Sales are dropping off. The brand, as you said, Catherine, the architecture of that user experience feels disjointed. I think the thing they could bring sounds like you have said, teachability, just an attitude of going, hey, we're open to hear that we may have this wrong. Or maybe it was right, and now it's just kind of, shifting. And the other is to come in and bring in senior leadership. Does that sound about right? Just be open and get your leadership involved.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes I would even say we do our best work in categories we've not worked with before. So yes, we were grounded in consumer goods for sure.
Okay.
But we love to work with other categories. So we did incredible work with the Oklahoma City Thunder NBA team for many years. And, you're talking about how do you position a team, obviously to the fans, but also just sometimes to a consumer of one, that athlete. So that was incredible, bringing all that knowledge that we have in these other categories to that challenge, or working in the banking world, or working in the tech world. So to your question, can people come to us and ask us a question, say, hey, what do you think to this? Please do. I mean, we love, Paul and I will take calls personally. That's another thing. We're still very involved. We've got an incredible team, but we're still very involved, particularly upstream in those conversations. So if someone has a problem they want to throw at us, and it's a good chemistry fit, we'll take a call. And we're super happy to try and see if we can bring some fresh perspective. A lot of it is being able to stand it from the outside, think about the future trends. We do a lot of innovation work. So what's happening, what's coming your way that you might not be seeing yet, and just helping someone look at their problem differently. So
Right. Awesome. Paul, any comments on that as we close out? I like these comments, guys.
Yeah, no, it's something that we've so proudly done over the years, and I think it just comes out of curiosity, and also we're brand nerds and we don't get out very often, obviously. Is bringing.
I changed my mind. The episode will be called Brand Nerds. Brand Nerds. Sorry, you just gave it to me. Sorry.
The next $1 million. There you go. You can have it for free. You can have it for free.
There you go.
Is that sort of, the fresh perspective, opening the new doors and looking at a problem in a different way. That's so one of the reasons, just to go full circle on how you opened up the conversation is when I first met Catherine, it was like, this is something that just reframe the problem in a completely different way. And I think that's a big unlock and when you get a magic partner, obviously, but agency partner as well, is they're not just derivative and going through the motions. And, people say, oh, Clark McDowall, you make your life so difficult. It's like, yeah, we do, because no freaking problem. A challenge is exactly the same every time. You can't do that by definition. So we do make a rod for our own backs, maybe, but we will try and bring that fresh perspective and try and really sort of, unpack what that problem is. So it's not just some sort of regurgitated derivative answer using a set bunch of tools we got, going dusty on the shelf and apply. And that's been kind of like, I think, the ethos for all the years that we've done, and I think will continue. And it's about, again, it's bringing that perspective, not being afraid to challenge, always looking for another way, a better way, optimizing, being brave, and then ultimately really trying to do the right thing by your clients, because that's what they trust you to do. And that's where you become an expert.
And we're going to use our favorite expression, Paul, yes, and that we get from our improv training, which is flipping the script and bringing it to life, making it tangible for people. And that's where intelligence and imagination coming together and having creative and strategy integrated is so important. We can flip it, and then we kind of have to let our clients feel it too, because words are great, but they need to be able to visualize what we're all talking about. So I'll throw it right back to you, Paul, in terms of, making sure that we do both things and that, there's chemistry and all of those things.
And that's how it started, that conversation, and that's how we work with the teams. It's how we, want them to work together, and it's how you solve problems with clients that way as well. It's about relationship.
Well, Catherine Clark, Paul McDowall of Clark McDowall, thank you guys so much. This time flies, doesn't it? It drives me bananas. It gets fun during the last 5 minutes, and I go, oh, we're short on time. We could go on for another hour, but I think that would be less interesting to folks, is to cut it and come back whether you all look into getting this produced by Martin Scorsese, your story, or it's a comedy, I feel like that could be a thing. I think a reality show of you two arguing and the chemistry and all the fun, I'm kidding, would be fun. But clearly what you guys bring to the table is seen on this video podcast and heard. For those of you listening, again, we'll link everything in the podcast. You can visit clarkmcdowell.com. Please check them out on LinkedIn. If any of this stuff stirred you a little, particularly you leader, owner folk that can sense that your in-house marketing is a little bit at a loss and your corporate structure is at a turn, Clark McDowell would be a wonderful place to start. Like we mentioned before, the best work happens when leadership's involved and you're open to some new ideas. So again, guys, thanks so much. Cheers to our unsponsored drinks for craft beverages. And we will talk to you guys soon. I appreciate you being on the chat.
Thank you, Drew. Thank you for having us on the show.
My pleasure. My pleasure, guys. Have a great one. Thanks.